You know, last time we chatted, I had the next day I had a member of the Russian Parliament talk trash about me on their Duma. So,
really?
Yeah.
Did that help in the in your election?
Well, I think everybody recognizes that I'm still chasing Russians. You know.
Thank you for that. So, Will, let me just ask you. So you're someone who has been actually one of the most active proponents of innovation, science, makers' rooms and whatnot in the Congress. You're on the GOP side of it. And I guess I want to start out, when you walk around this fair and you sort of say, how would you grade the literacy of your colleagues on science and innovation?
We got a room to go, right? Mm-hmm. But I think most of my colleagues recognize that we have to prepare our kids for jobs that don't exist today. I think my colleagues recognize, especially in the area of cybersecurity, that it's important. They may not always understand the nuts and bolts or intrinsically know what needs to be done next, but they recognize that it's an issue. And so you just look at some of the work we've already done with modernization, right? I always say IT procurement is not a sexy topic, right? No one's going to hold a parade for IT procurement, but it's really going to change the way that the government operates, and it can help make the federal government a game changer.
But why not have a parade for IT procurement if you're in the middle of a global hacking scandal and your Achilles heel are old systems? Why not have a parade?
Look, we'll make you the Grand Marshal because
I want Bob Cohn to be the.
No, look, we have to accept the fact that we are an increasingly integrated world, and everything's going digital. But we have problems like some folks in the federal government still think the cloud is new technology, right? It's some would categorize that as emerging technology. It's emerged, right?
Right.
And so you still have questions about security, and it's how you implement it. So part of what we need to do is we have to fix this for the next generations, right? We got to make sure. One of the initiatives I've had back home is to get more kids exposed to coding. If data is the lingua franca of the future, you got to understand, you got to be able to, if data is the coin of the realm, the lingua franca is coding.
Right.
And Microsoft helped participate. We trained some algebra teachers to introduce coding into algebra class at 7th and 8th grade. So next fall, 5,000 kids back home are going to be exposed to coding when they probably weren't, and that is the age that we have to get into the minds so that we grow.
Do you think there's a point where saying what you just said, which sounds so sensible, will sound anachronistic? In other words, do you think there's a point, which is a tipping point, where the country goes back into understanding that coding would be the language your kids need to be wired for? And as you begin looking at the United States government, which is big and sprawling, there seem to be a lot of challenges in terms of efficiencies of bringing it around. I guess is there an embrace of that next generation methodology that you see really happening?
Slowly but surely, and I think in the government it starts with empowering. CIOs. There was a bill called FITARA that was passed a couple years ago, and what it says is the CIO should be responsible for, if they're going to be held responsible for defending the digital infrastructure, they should also be responsible for what goes on and into that infrastructure. And we got to make sure that they're able to adopt new technology, because the problem we have now, if it takes 9 months to review some cloud service provider.
Right.
9 months is a long time. We shouldn't be legislating things like in the financial services industry. He said everything has to be chip and pin. The financial services could go to biometrics now, right? But so it's hard to not get behind, and it's also hard for folks up here in Washington D.C. and Congress not to react. And the example I use is the hacking of the Jeep about a year ago, and most people in Congress are like, oh, we have to legislate this. We have to. No, hey, calm down, take a deep breath. It's still really hard to hack a car barreling down a highway at 90 miles an hour. But if you give me access to something for 4 days, I'm going to be able to get in. So how do you not overreact when something bad happens? So this is some of the culture that we have to change up here. And it's scary, it's technical.
So how do you do it? So you've got a president right now of your party who, if we were to have President Trump here and I ask him, how would you define a wall? And he would say, it's real thick, it's real big, it's here, it's this, and it's all very tangible. And if I ask you how to define a wall, I don't want to put words in your mouth, but it's fiber optic, it's drones, it's sensors, and your wall is like out of the future. Kind of, and his wall is 100 years ago, 1917. If you ask about him about propulsion, it's hey, we're gonna get rid of this digital stuff and go back to steam. How hard is it to be you with someone who doesn't understand
I'll take it as a
these
compliment.
advances? Yeah.
Look, for me, it's real simple. Be honest. Tell people what you're doing and why you're doing it. And I will say, my interaction with the Office of American Innovation has been,
i.e. Jared Kushner.
Yeah, it has been great.
Well, what's the coolest thing? What's the wow thing that Jared Kushner's got up his sleeve that you've helped influence?
What he and I talk about are some basic stuff. It's blocking and tackling. We can't get to the wow if you don't have the infrastructure and the process in place to get there. And so for me, the wow is allowing a agency to use money that they save for up to 3 years. Right? It takes away this notion of if you don't use it, you lose it. So I wouldn't call that wow, but anybody who knows how the federal government has been operating, being able to save money and keep money, and have access to it for 3 years, that's a really big innovation within the federal government, and that's ultimately the problem. But I think there's been some release about the push to make the VA and the DoD electronic health record interoperable.
Right.
This is where the federal government and the VA could actually be a game changer. If you achieve true interoperability between electronic health records between the two largest healthcare providers in the world, DoD and VA, you can start saving people's lives. You can do virtualized research cohorts. Other folks will get in line to make sure that their electronic health record is interoperable as well. And you can save lives and keep people healthier longer if you can actually achieve a longitudinal record. So this is where the federal government should be. And I think the Office of American Innovation and a number of us in Congress are trying to make sure that we can be in a position to do that. Space. This really is our advantage in space is small. This is one area, this is one domain in which another country, China, could leapfrog us in dominance. And that's a problem. And we should be having our brightest minds on this solution. And so we need to get back to where the government could do that. We forget the role the government has played in innovation. And I think the government's not going to solve everybody's problems, but there are some big things where we can be real, true leaders and innovators.
So who are the enemies among your colleagues of that sort of vision?
It's not
like DARPA,
enemy.
right? DARPA did a lot of good, right? So you talk about space. You talk about. I saw the president just decided to keep on Francis Collins at NIH, which I think is interesting and potentially hopeful. But broadly, when you're sort of looking at what those partnerships need to be between the innovations in the private sector and getting the government in there, right now I just have to be honest. The government looks like it is slashed in all the places that you would want those investments, at least the budgetarily.
Excuse me. I always remind people, I did this on the last administration, I'll do it under this administration.
Budgets aren't real?
The president's budget is a statement of priorities. It's Congress that funds it, right? That funds the government.
Right.
So, look, we just, when it comes to NIH, for example, the 21st Century Cures of last year, it's a big investment in saying, hey, it's 2017, we can cure cancer. Let's do that. So the opposition is not to the vision. It is this inertia that says, oh, this is too hard. Too many moving parts. We're in a tight resource environment, right? It is the getting past that inertia that you see within the government, and which has put an imprint on the way people think, and you can't say no, right? And I am thankful that I came. I'm a professional intelligence officer at heart, right? I started in the CIA when I was 22, and you can't. When the president says, "Hey, stop Al Qaeda from blowing this up," you can't say, "Sorry, boss. We don't have enough money, or we don't have enough people, or that's just too hard." That's not. You don't have the luxury of saying that. And so that's the mentality that I wish we had a little bit more throughout our agencies, but also in the legislature.
Well, we just had a great panel up here. A young man named Shane Scranton is the CEO of Iris VR. It's a virtual reality. Dana Grayson, who's a partner investor in 3D printing and beauty stuff, framing, a very diverse set of stuff, and Maria Rose Belding, who's solving the kind of food shortage challenges and how to get more efficiently. And as I was thinking about what they all are doing, I think none of them require any interaction with the government at all. Like I'm not completely sure of this. Maybe Shane to a certain degree because he deals with building. But there's a whole raft of innovation that goes out there that seems to me perfectly fine circumventing DC and the dysfunction here. And I'm just interested in whether you think DC will let that continue to happen, or will it get in and muck up the work?
I think the best thing DC can do is stay out of the way of entrepreneurship and creativity. If we do that, it will be a success. How do we make sure that one of the things for me is if you have the proverbial 2 guys or 2 gals in a garage, how can they sell their widget back into the federal government if it's something that can be helpful to the government, right? How do we make sure that when you're starting a business, the first thing you shouldn't have to think about is a cumbersome tax code. You should be worrying about how you develop the best widget, how do you hire the best people, and so that's how government can support.
So you said best people. Sometimes the best people have visa issues.
Yeah, look.
They're going to England now, or Canada, or Australia instead of the U.S. I mean, where are you on the kind of shock therapy, or shock, not even therapy, the shock hits to the flow of talent into the United States?
So I'm the only member of Congress that has ever stamped a visa. Okay? One of my cover jobs when I was in the CIA was stamping visas all day long, and then I did my real job at night. We have benefited. The United States has benefited from the brain drain for the last couple of decades. Let's continue that. Right? And let's benefit from the hard-working drain as well. If you're going to be a productive member of our society, let's get you here as quickly as possible. And in 2017, we can design a system on H-1B visas or even H-2A on agriculture that is based on need. Right? So you have these arbitrary caps across countries, and not every country uses it. So can you move those? And so there are a lot of actual H-1B visas that go unused. Right? We have the stock, but they're at the wrong country. So can we reapportion that?
Have you shared that idea with the American Office of Innovation?
It is, and there's actually some legislation.
Jared Kushner.
No, look, there is appetite to do some of these things. There really is. I know most people say that's pie in the sky thinking, Hurd, but we have to solve this problem. For example, so you know my district, big, 29 counties, 2 time zones.
Isn't it like the biggest in the country?
Well, it's bigger than 26 states.
Yeah.
And not many districts does it take you 10.5 hours to drive 80 miles an hour to get across it, right? And El Paso, Juarez is in my district. Juarez is in Mexico. I was recently at an incubator there. And I'm walking through, and I was just stopping people and asking questions. A guy that was born and raised in Chicago, Illinois, served in the Marines for about 5 years, is starting a energy tech startup out of an incubator in Juarez, Mexico. Right? We can't just think that we have the only good ideas, and we need to continue to benefit from the brain drain. And we have a lot of really smart people coming to our universities, and our immigration rules are preventing them from staying here and building their businesses here, adding jobs to our economy, and so this is something that it does have to be fixed.
Before I go to the audience here, I want to, sure. Oftentimes, fairs like this that we're at are designed to sort of inspire, sometimes shame, legislators and people in public, policy practitioners into being, having vision of what's possible out there. And I'm having, I have nightmares about mosquitoes, so my head is, very much in the kind of mosquito display out there that you should all see. It's really cool. But what do you think companies like Microsoft, Google, Apple, these big juggernaut firms out there that are innovating at a certain level, or small firms, need to get about Washington? What do you think you're misunderstood in? What do you think Ed over here needs to hear that he's not getting?
So a lot of people come up here and brief members and the staff. Those things are valuable, okay? But broaden the concept, right? Talk about the why. Simon Sinek always says, what's the why? Get to the why first. That's sometimes missing. If virtual machine learning means nothing if you don't understand the tool machine learning is and what it can get to, right? And where it can move us as a society.
Right.
And look, I think one of the things that has blown my mind, I get the opportunity, I talk to a lot of people, and my mind doesn't get blown that often, but HoloLens, if y'all haven't seen it, go down and see it. It truly is, it's on a whole nother level. And if we're able to get all the MRI data on someone who has a brain tumor, and you can get 5 doctors in there to look at that, how is that going to change health and keep people alive? McDonald's Observatory is in my district.
Right.
And the third largest telescope in the world. Their job, they're looking for exoplanets, planets outside of our solar system that we could possibly live on. They're trying to find 1 million. They are also looking into dark energy. When you and I were in school,
right.
The concept was that the universe was expanding and was now contracting. What McDonald Observatory and other scientists found out that the universe is actually accelerating in its expansion. And it's because 70% of the universe is dark energy, which nobody really knows what it is, right? And they're using, so telescopes, as you know, no longer, you have a little, you don't, look into something. It's a big data monitor. They have all this data. And a lot of times they're viewing it with their eyeballs, right? You're gonna try to find 1 million exoplanets, and you're gonna look through a bunch of papers? No. Let's put it all in a 3D environment, have people you can see things and it be exposed to stuff. So my point is, people that are on the edge, you're so far on the edge that you got to help people understand the context of what you're trying to do and what problem you're trying to solve. And start with that. And I will say this about members of Congress. They are best in the world at recognizing an opportunity. Okay? So show us what that opportunity is, and then you're going to see people's minds change.
Fascinating conversation. The last time I interviewed Will Hurd, he told the story of when he was a Russian agent, sort of got outed, the whole system was coming down on his head, he was trying to get out of the country. That was as exciting what you just said as that. So let me open up the floor to questions and comments from me. Right up here in front. We have John.
Pearls of wisdom as well, too.
Yeah.
Thank you. One of the things that we know about DC is that there might be instances where it's best for them to stay out of the way, but often they're already in the way. What can we do to push both Congress and some of the regulatory agencies for a bias towards action rather than being a bottleneck to innovation?
Sure. So help us find that statute, that piece of law, that Section 8, number 2. When you're able to actually identify that statute that is causing the problem, that helps us figure out how you can fix it. And I'm always shocked by the folks that come in, identify a problem. Yeah, it makes sense. Okay, what is actually driving that? Nobody knows that piece, what legislation is causing that, or is it a rule within the agency, or how they interpret a piece of legislation. And so helping to solve that is a lot, that gets us quicker to putting a legislative fix to tweak that language or to remove it.
Yes, ma'am, in the back, and then we'll go to Michael.
Hi, Congressman Hurd. Laura Taylor-Colley from the Council on Foreign Relations. And I wanted to ask you if you could talk a little bit more about the financing of innovation. The federal government has often had a role, particularly, you mentioned DARPA earlier, but in this current really budget-constrained environment, where do you think that there's room for the federal government to really have a role in being a key part of the innovation story.
Thank you.
Look, good to see you. In a tight resource environment, we have to make tough decisions. And I think one of the things that we can do is how do we figure out how to leverage federal dollars with private sector dollars? This is a move towards public-private partnerships. I think some of the innovation, one of the things that I've learned from a lot of folks within DoD, you have a lot of scientists and a lot of patents that have been developed within DoD, but those can't get commercialized. They can't get outside of the DoD environment. I think that is one way that's where you can, having the federal government be a partner in something and generate revenue there that can get sunk back into innovation or some of these labs. That's a complicated issue to try to solve, but we're looking at that. But look, NIH, basic research matters. We have to stay committed to basic research, and we got to make sure that we put our money where our mouth is. And last Congress, we did that with the 21st Century Cures.
Mike, you can let him hold the mic, yeah.
Mike Nelson with Cloudflare.
Yeah.
You're in a unique position because you've worked in the intelligence community and you're a techie. One of the most important technologies for the e-commerce world, for the Internet of Things, is encryption. And yet we're hearing the Interior Minister of Germany and France ask the European Union to look into ways to defeat encryption. And we have rumors that the UK is going to try to limit how encryption is used. What would you be telling people to make sure that other countries don't try to limit this incredibly important foundational technology?
Encryption is important to our security and it's important to our economy. We should be looking at ways to strengthen encryption, not weaken it. It's that simple. And I've lost count of where we are in the crypto wars. Right? Maybe 4, maybe 5. This debate is going to continue. This debate is going to get worse when quantum computing becomes a real thing, because that's going to be a complete game changer in how we think about security. So and I would also say, guess what? There's really no such thing as something that's impenetrable. We found that in Apple v. FBI, right, or whatever the case was. So because you got to think, you got to work.
Are you saying you're on the industry side?
Oh yeah. I've been very clear on this. We should be strengthening encryption, and our civil liberties are not a problem. They are the things that make our country great. We can protect our civil liberties and our digital infrastructure and chase bad guys at the same time. It's hard.
You heard it here.
It's hard, but we have to figure it out.
Right here. Okay, we're going to go real lightning round. Yes?
Hi, my name is Ronit Avni with Localized. So science and technology go hand in hand, and I was just looking at your record as it relates to climate change and climate science. Doesn't look so great. So I'm actually curious, because on technology...
Can't be great on everything.
Can't be great on everything, but your technology record is very strong. So I want to understand, how do you reconcile your positions on climate with your positions on technology?
Well,
Short form.
I would first say, that's your opinion, right? And I don't know what you're looking at to make that decision. But what's unfortunate here in Washington,
Well, first of all, do you believe in climate change?
Yes, we are having an impact on our environment. Period. End of story. Even Rick Perry said that the other day, but he got panned in the media, right? This is the question becomes is how do we actually work together to solve this problem, and that is where we need to get. And there's this everybody keeps talking past one another on this, because I think it is technology can help us make sure that we continue to have a great planet. I've lived in some pretty crummy places. And I do not want Washington, D.C. or San Antonio, Texas, or Los Angeles, whatever, to get like that, right? So I don't know what the solution is. I don't, but I think we should be able to all put our heads together to solve that problem.
Really fast, because I know you're both jumping out.
Valeria Pulinic, Ashoka. We're all here talking about game-changing innovation and entrepreneurship because of the investments in education 20 years ago or more. What do you think Congress should do today to ensure that this conversation could really equal the playing field and that everyone would have access to the kind of education we need.
Great, and I'm going to take this lady right here, and we'll answer both together.
That's right.
Great, and wait, we've got to get you a mic.
Oh, sure.
She's going to pass it to you. You got 15 seconds.
Just as government created the D&I position, do you think we could possibly have need a CTO, a chief technology,
Yep, sure.
overarching?
Terrific.
Education. I'm going to say a phrase I guarantee you nobody in this room knows. ESSA. The Every Student Succeeds Act. If you have kids or grandkids, you should know what that is. Last year, a bipartisan piece of legislation that got signed into law that says you no longer have a one-size-fits-all solution to education in the United States of America. San Antonio is Cybersecurity City, USA. So if schools want to have a cybersecurity-centric programming class, they can. One of the areas we can be trying to push to is making sure coding is a CTE course. We'll see that expand more throughout schools. So Congress has actually acted. Nobody talked about it when it was signed. Nobody in here probably knows what that is, but it's a good example. I'm a CTO. So the federal CIO is kind of the person that is coordinating all the related issues. The federal CIO needs a bigger staff. There is a federal CIO, absolutely,
yeah.
Absolutely. Tony Scott was the last one. The position does not have has not been staffed yet, but it is a critical role. It was the federal CIO that moved 96% of the federal government to two-factor authentication when it comes to authentication of getting into government, the federal network. So it was like 3 people in that entire office. So having someone in that role that understands cybersecurity, that understands technology, that understands what good digital system hygiene is really important.
Before I invite Bob Cohn to come and close this out, please give a round of applause to Congressman Will Hurd. It was really, really terrific discussion. So, Bob?